One of the hardest truths to accept in business, in life, in relationships is that we're not in control of the timing of the most important events. We like to think we can map everything out, set a schedule, plan the milestones, and move from point A to point B in an orderly sequence. But if you've lived long enough, you know reality doesn't work that way. And when it comes to something as deeply personal and mission critical as the person you'll spend your life with, your so-called kingdom spouse, timing isn't just a factor, it's the factor. God's timing doesn't operate on our preferences, it operates on His strategy. And that's where people get tripped up. We think in terms of comfort, convenience, and speed. He thinks in terms of readiness, purpose, and alignment. And when you're talking about a relationship that's going to be foundational to your destiny, those aren't just nice words, they're structural requirements. You have to understand something. If God revealed the right person to you at the wrong time, it would be a disaster. One or both of you wouldn't be ready, emotionally, spiritually, even practically. The weight of the assignment the two of you are meant to carry would crush you, because you'd be carrying it without the necessary growth, without the necessary resilience. Here's how I like to think about it. Imagine building a rocket. You can have the design, the engineers, the fuel, the destination, but if you try to launch before the systems are tested and ready, you don't just fail to reach orbit, you risk total collapse. Timing in that situation isn't a matter of preference, it's life or death for the mission. That's exactly how God treats timing when it comes to revealing your kingdom spouse. He's not interested in just getting you together for the sake of romance. He's assembling a team for a mission, your life's mission, and He'll protect that mission by withholding the reveal until both of you are mission ready. That means your character is developed, your wounds are healed, your priorities are aligned, and you've learned how to operate out of purpose rather than desperation. Now, the frustrating part is that God's timing often disrupts our plans. You might have a 5-year vision that includes find the right person by year 3, but God might think in decades, not years. And the moment you start trying to speed up His process, you start building with the wrong materials. Compromise, shortcuts, shallow compatibility. And I've seen it again and again. That's how people end up in relationships that look good on paper, but collapse under the reality of life. When the timing is divine, you won't have to manipulate the process. The circumstances will align in ways that you couldn't have engineered yourself. Opportunities will open, paths will cross, conversations will happen that defy logic. And here's what's really interesting. The timing often feels inconvenient to you. You might meet this person when you're completely absorbed in your work, when you're living in a different city, when you've just decided you're done looking. That's by design. God isn't trying to work on your clock. He's trying to make it clear that the reveal is His work. That's why it often happens when you stop striving to make it happen on your own. You'll recognize the timing not because it matches your calendar, but because it bypasses your control and still works out better than you could have planned. There's a psychological benefit to this as well. When you stop forcing your timeline, you free up mental and emotional bandwidth to focus on becoming the kind of person who can actually sustain a powerful, purpose-driven relationship. You stop obsessing over when it will happen and you start investing in who you'll be when it does. That shift doesn't just prepare you, it transforms you. And that transformation is often what God's been waiting for in the first place. I've seen this play out in leadership again and again. People want a position, a partnership, an opportunity, and they want it now, but they don't realize that premature access to the right thing can be worse than not having it at all. Because if you get it too soon, you don't just risk losing it, you risk damaging it in a way that can't be repaired. The same principle applies here, and make no mistake, God is not delaying to punish you. He's synchronizing two separate stories into one narrative, and that takes precision. You're not just waiting on your spouse to be ready, your spouse is also waiting on you to be ready. That mutual readiness is what makes the reveal shocking, not because it's flashy, but because you'll look back and realize how perfectly the puzzle pieces fit and how impossible it would have been to force them into place earlier. So the challenge is to stop fighting the timing and start trusting it. That doesn't mean passivity. You don't just sit back and hope. You work, you grow, you prepare yourself as though the reveal could happen tomorrow, but you remain at peace if it doesn't happen for years. That's maturity. That's trust. In the end, when God reveals your kingdom spouse, the timing will make sense in a way it never could have from where you're standing now. And when that moment comes, you'll understand why He didn't give it to you a second sooner. The right person at the wrong time is still the wrong outcome. The signature of confirmation in the same style, so the 2 points read like a unified momentum-building speech section. That would make the whole thing seamless. When it comes to recognizing the person God has set apart for you, the real challenge isn't just meeting them, it's knowing that you know. Because here's the reality: we live in a world where emotions can be intense, attraction can be immediate, and chemistry can cloud judgment. But God doesn't rely on those alone to confirm something this important. He leaves a signature, and it's one you can recognize if you've trained yourself to pay attention. That signature is clarity. Not the kind of clarity that comes from infatuation, that's shallow and temporary. I'm talking about the kind of clarity that feels stable, like the ground under your feet. It's when circumstances, inner conviction, and even outside confirmation start to line up in ways that you could never have orchestrated yourself. Think about how great companies test a product before release. They don't just rely on one data point, they run multiple trials, stress tests, and cross-checks until the evidence converges on the same conclusion. This works. God's confirmations work the same way. You'll see consistency across different sources, a conversation here, a situation there, maybe even a word from someone who doesn't know the details of your life. They all point in the same direction, without you prompting them. Now, here's where it gets philosophical. Human decision-making is vulnerable to bias. We see what we want to see, especially when emotions are involved. That's why God's signature doesn't depend on your ability to read the situation perfectly. Instead, He builds redundancy into the system, multiple confirmations, repeated alignment. The truth shows up in more than one form, so you don't have to lean on wishful thinking. One of the most important confirmations is inner peace. And I mean true peace, not the absence of conflict because you're ignoring red flags, but the deep, unshakable calm that comes when your spirit and your mind are in agreement. If you're constantly wrestling with doubt or you have to keep talking yourself into the relationship, that's a warning sign. God's direction may still challenge you. It's not always comfortable, but it won't leave you in a permanent state of turmoil. Here's what I've noticed: when the relationship is part of God's plan, the energy you spend is invested, not drained. You feel like you're building something solid. That doesn't mean there aren't challenges. There will be, but the challenges serve as training, not destruction. They push both of you to grow in ways that align with the bigger mission, not in ways that compromise it. And this is key. The confirmation often comes before your emotions fully catch up. You might recognize the alignment before you feel the fireworks. That's because God is building something deeper than attraction. He's creating a bond rooted in purpose, and purpose outlasts the highs and lows of emotion. In fact, some of the most enduring partnerships start with a strong sense of mission and respect before they develop the emotional intensity people associate with love at first sight. Now, the opposite is also true. When something isn't from God, the signs will be inconsistent. You might feel excited in one moment and uneasy the next. The confirmations will be flimsy. A single coincidence here, an isolated gesture there, but nothing that forms a coherent pattern. If you're honest with yourself, you'll find you're having to force the narrative to make it work. That's a dangerous place to be. From a strategic perspective, the principle is simple. If something is truly meant for you, it will withstand scrutiny. It will make sense, not just in the context of romance, but in the broader scope of your life's direction. It will complement your purpose rather than compete with it. That's the kind of compatibility that can't be faked, and it's the reason God insists on giving you more than one confirmation. Think of it like building an acquisition strategy in business. You don't move forward just because one metric looks good. You run due diligence across financials, culture, leadership, long-term scalability. You want to know not just that the deal works today, but that it will still work 10 years from now. God's confirmations are His way of doing due diligence for your life. He's showing you the long-term viability of the relationship before you commit to it fully. Here's the beauty of it. When you recognize His signature, you don't have to overthink your decision. You can move forward with both faith and logic on your side. That's a rare combination. It gives you confidence in your yes, and it gives you resilience when challenges come. Because you know this wasn't just your idea, it was His design. But this requires you to be paying attention. If you're rushing, distracted, or desperate, you'll miss the subtle patterns. You'll confuse excitement with confirmation. You'll mistake temporary alignment for divine orchestration. The discipline is to slow down enough to notice, to step back and look at the whole picture, not just the most flattering parts. In the end, God's signature is about assurance. It's his way of saying, this is safe to build on, this will last. And when you've seen enough of his work in other areas of your life, you'll start to trust that signature without needing him to shout. The right relationship doesn't need you to manufacture certainty. It comes with its own evidence.